are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Friday edition of the show. You can find the podcast Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Make sure to hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. I'm Louie DiBiase. Thanks so much for tuning into LOE. We've got 2 more days until the Eagles' Sunday matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. It's a 4:25 kickoff. The Eagles are trying to remain the only undefeated team in the NFL, getting to a 5-0 record, hopefully, by the end of Sunday against like I said on Wednesday, a roller coaster 2-2 Cardinals team. I take a first look at the matchups, talked about the Zach Ertz revenge angle of this game, Kyler Murray versus Jalen Hurts. You can find that podcast from Wednesday, all podcast platforms. And then yesterday, Gino sat down with Locked On Cardinals host Alex Clancy for Crossover Thursday, diving even deeper into the matchup. So again, get ready for Eagles-Cardinals, the battle of the birds right here with Locked On Eagles. Today, I've got LOE 3. You guys probably are sick of hearing about that since we're just leaving you out to dry this year. Right now, my record on the year is 4-8 with my 3-player props that I bet each week for the Eagles with our official sportsbook Bet Online. Gino is 5-7 yesterday, or I should say on Sunday. He finally went over 500 at 2-1. I've been 1-2 all 4 weeks, but I got 3 more bets against the Cardinals that I want to try to win you guys some money with. So I'll get into that. And then Donovan McNabb had a few things to say about the 2022 Eagles, and Terrell Owens got in on the action. So we'll get into that as well. And then a bunch of updates from the injury report on both sides for Philadelphia and Arizona. The Eagles are wearing white on black. How about that for this game against the Cardinals? Absolutely love that idea. Why? Well, number one, the Eagles are 3-0 when they're wearing white jerseys and black pants. Last year, they beat the Denver Broncos on the road. They beat the New York Jets on the road, and they beat the Washington Commanders on the road in those jerseys. They pretty much always win when they wear black pants. So love the idea in that way, but also because the Arizona Cardinals are wearing their new alternate black helmet, they are doing something similar to what the Eagles are doing. They're going to be black on white. So they're wearing black helmets, black jerseys, and white pants. I'm glad it's an alpha move by the Eagles, not letting the Cardinals steal the show by going black on black. The Eagles are going to wear their cool alternate as well, white on black. So I think that's an alpha move. They were 3-0 with that jersey last year. I think it's the right choice. Had to make sure I got my jersey analytics in for you because that's what we do every Friday. I feel like the Eagles always announce on Friday at like 2:00, they announce what jersey they have. And so it's always my goal every Friday show to come up with some sort of jersey stat for you guys. So it's going to be white on black. They're 3-0. That makes me feel good because the Eagles have not beaten the Arizona Cardinals on the road since 2001. It's kind of wild. They lost in, I think 2005. No. It's every 8 years. 2009, right? The NFC Championship. And then they lost in 2012 and 2011 because of the Kevin Cobb return game. They lost in 2020. So they're 0. I'm getting all my matchups messed up, but they're 0-5 since the Eagles beat Arizona in 2001 in the desert. So it's crazy enough. I did some research on this today. It's the Eagles' longest active drought when it comes to road wins against an NFC opponent. They have beaten every other NFC team on the road since they've beaten the Cardinals in Arizona in 2001. So it's been a long dry spell, which is, I think that makes sense considering it's the desert. Very fitting for this statistic. But yeah, the Eagles have really struggled when they go out west into Glendale. And so the Cardinals have kind of had their number. Try to get, any advantage they can. Jerseys, injuries, how hot this team looks right now. I'm feeling very confident that the Eagles should be favored, but it's going to be a tough matchup against a team that they tend to struggle with throughout their franchise history. Former NFC East rivals, by the way, before the Cardinals moved to the NFC West. We'll continue to get into the matchup in a little bit. I do want to dive into first, though, LOE 3 presented by Bet Online. Each week, Gino and I try to hammer 3 player props for you each that you should bet on with the Eagles offense against the opposing team. So again, looking at our records this year, I'm struggling. I'm 4-8. I'm 4 games under 500. I went 1-2 last week. Gino had a good week. He went 2-1. He's slowly climbing back. He's 5-7. My units to date, minus 3.94. Him, minus 2.80. Here are our 3 bets each. So for Gino, he's taking a Hurts anytime rushing touchdown, which seems fitting. He has 4 rushing touchdowns this year. He's averaging at least 1 a game. He has a head-to-head bet here, which I really like. DeVonta Smith to have more receptions than Rondale Moore, although that is interesting because Avonte Maddox has been ruled out for this game. So it's going to be Josiah Scott again in the slot. Rondale Moore will likely play most of the time on the inside for the Cardinals, especially with DeAndre Hopkins still out. Hollywood plays inside at times in A.J. Green, but Rondale will probably play a lot inside. So Moore could have a good game. So I like that Gino, though, is still going to hammer DeVonta Smith to get more receptions than Moore. And then his third bet is Jalen Hurts over 48.5 rushing yards. So he's betting on Jalen Hurts as a runner and DeVonta Smith to outperform Rondale Moore. When it comes to my bets, my 3 are A.J. Brown, the over on 73.5 receiving yards. Dallas Goedert, head-to-head against Zach Ertz. Had to make a bet on the revenge game, right? Dallas Goedert has more receiving yards than Zach Ertz. And then my third bet is DeVonta Smith to have over 3.5 receptions. I think that's a really low line from Vegas to give DeVonta Smith only the over is at 3.5. I don't know. To me, I'm hammering that. I love his matchup against Marco Wilson. You saw he had 8 catches against Minnesota. He went absolutely bonkers against Washington with over 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, was totally dominating. One of the best individual performances from an Eagles receiver I've seen in my entire lifetime. So last week, yeah, he only had a few short catches, but it was extremely cold. The Eagles were running the ball for the majority of the time against the Jaguars, and it was the A.J. Brown show, as Brown had 95 yards last week, and Dallas Goedert had over 70. So for me, this week, I think DeVonta, he should definitely have over 3 receptions. I think 4 and above is definitely the floor. I like his matchup against Marco Wilson, the Cardinals' second tight end, or I should say second cornerback behind Brett Murphy. I think he has the advantage there. And I think DeVonta, just as you saw in that mic'd up segment last week, he just hated the cold and he wasn't wearing his gloves. And then he got banged up. He suffered an ankle injury that had him go into the blue medical tent. So I'm going to hammer the over on DeVonta Smith, 3.5 receptions. I think Dallas Goedert's going to have more receiving yards than Zach Ertz. And why I took this bet, although Zach Ertz has been producing very consistently for Arizona, he's got 6 receptions, and 8 receptions in the last 3 weeks. Without DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray is really relying on Zach. But the Eagles, I'm going to keep banking on this trend that the Eagles get the best of the former franchise greats. They got the best of Deuce Staley. They got the best of, I don't want to call Jalen Reagor a franchise great, but in these revenge games, the Eagles normally come out on top. They came out on top of Reagor and Justin Jefferson. They came out on top on Carson Wentz, and they came out on top over Doug Peterson. So I'm going to keep going with that trend. Let's get to 5-0. Dallas Goedert beats out Zach Ertz with more receiving yards on Sunday. And then the third bet again was A.J. Brown, the over on 73.5 receiving yards. A.J. Brown, I know it's an obvious talking point, but A.J. Brown, his impact on the Eagles this year has been generational. Like, yeah, Alshon Jeffrey coming into Philadelphia in 2017 did absolute wonders for Carson Wentz. It did absolute wonders opening up that offense. It helped Zach Ertz a ton. It helped Nelson Aguilar develop in year 3. Carson Wentz to take an MVP-like step. It helped Nick Foles get hot and have one of the best playoff runs we've ever seen. And the same thing in 2018. Like, his impact in Philadelphia when he signed in that offseason was massive. And I think DeVonta Smith last year, bringing him in to provide some stability when all you had was Jalen Reagor and Travis Fulgham, John Hightower, and unproven Quez Watkins. DeVonta Smith's impact was massive as well. There have been some receivers you brought in that have really elevated this offense, but there hasn't been a guy that has meant more to this team at this position like A.J. Brown has since, I would say, Terrell Owens, right? Terrell Owens, from the minute he touched that field with Donovan McNabb, you knew, oh yeah, this was the missing link. This was the piece they did not have, We're going to talk about T.O., by the way, later. A.J. Brown, very similarly, is having that kind of impact. I mean, listen to these numbers. 35 targets this year, 0 drops. He's third in the NFL in receiving yards with 404. He has the 5th most first downs in the entire NFL with 18. He has the most yards in the league, by the way. He's also helping Jalen Hurts develop in the areas he needed to. A.J. Brown has the most yards in the league over the middle on slant routes and crossers. He's the only receiver in football. I'm going to keep throwing these stats at you. He's the only receiver in the NFL this year with at least 5 receptions and over 65 receiving yards in every single game. Look, I knew A.J. Brown was a star in Tennessee, but maybe I wasn't watching enough or not paying attention, but I didn't think he was this good. I mean, A.J. Brown, again, since Terrell Owens, and I think DeVonta Smith is just as good as a receiver, to be honest, with the same amount of workload as A.J. Brown, but A.J. Brown is having a generational impact on this offense. He is helping develop your quarterback. He is opening up things for everybody else. The numbers, the historic rate that he is on right now, the pace, I should say, is something that only Terrell Owens could mirror from an Eagles receiver in the last 22 plus years, really even maybe ever, because Harold Carmichael, yeah, he was the talent, but he didn't have that opportunity in the 70s, and Mike Quick was always injured. So it's really Terrell Owens and A.J. Brown that have had this kind of impact, and it's been awesome to see. I think he's going to keep it going. I'm going to hammer the over on that 73.5 receiving yard bet, courtesy of Bet Online. Coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, I want to keep getting into this matchup. Eagles-Cardinals at 4:25. We'll take a look at the injury report. There's a couple updates to injuries that I think are really going to benefit the Eagles. We'll get into that coming up next right here on LOE. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Simply Safe. Here's a football analogy for you. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone. You need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. That's why I use and trust only Simply Safe Home Security. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you can always know your home is safe. There was a few times when I moved into my new house about a year and a half ago that I needed some reassurance with their 24/7 monitoring agency and their Simply Safe tech support staff. They had my back. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency. Even if you're not at home or can't be reached, Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when the threat is legitimate, when it's real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your house. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is legitimate so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month for free. That's right, for free at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. To learn more, there's no safe like Simply Safe. All right, Eagles fans, we thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure you also check out the NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. It just dropped today on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts at Bet Online. Thanks so much for Bet Online to bring us another week of LOE 3. Again, my bets were A.J. Brown over 73.5 receiving yards, Dallas Goedert to have more receiving yards than Zach Ertz, and then the over on DeVonta Smith, 3.5 receptions. So I'm riding with the big 3 of the Eagles passing game: Brown, Goedert, and Smith. I'm 4-8 this year. Hopefully I can win all 3 of those bets and get to 7-8 on the season. Right now, though, let's take another look at the injury report for this Eagles-Cardinals matchup. And there's a big update from the Cardinals offensive line that was already pretty inconsistent. And it's a unit that's had Kyler Murray a lot of the time have to run for his life and really utilize that his elite mobility that he truly does have. So according to Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury today, Cardinals starting center Rodney Hudson, he is not going to play. This is a huge advantage for the Eagles defensive line, especially on the interior. This pass rush has been on fire the last 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks ago, you saw they had 9.5 sacks on Carson Wentz. You saw last week Hassan Reddick had 2 strip sacks on Trevor Lawrence, totally dominating. They lead the NFL in sacks, and this is going to be huge. Also, they're the only team that has at least 5 defensive linemen with 2 or more sacks. That's going to be a huge matchup. Without Rodney Hudson now, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and Jordan Davis, 3 guys that have dominated this year, rushing the passer, more so Cox and Davis than Hargrave. Those 3 should be able to eat against Arizona's backup center on the interior and flush Kyler Murray on the outside. Fletcher Cox has been there, and Milton Williams too, for sure. Fletcher Cox has been their best pass rushing defensive tackle this year, but Jordan Davis sneakily has maybe been their most efficient, actually. So there's a Anthony DeBonia of D.I. Birds, the D.I. Birds blog, the D-Birds, I think he would say, right? His last name's kind of like mine, DiBiase. He actually created a new stat, and it's based on a lot of the advanced analytics from PFF. I thought it was super fascinating. Wanted to talk about it in the show. He created a stat called PIP. It's called Pass Impact Percentage. So it takes into account sacks, quarterback hits, quarterback hurries, and batted passes to combine into a PIP percentage. So of Jordan Davis's 46 pass rush snaps, he has made 6 impact plays, so to speak, which is a 13.4% PIP percentage. So he actually has the highest pass rush impact of any defensive tackle on the Eagles right now. Fletcher Cox is second, Javon Hargrave's third, then Milton Williams and Marlon Tuipulotu. So Jordan Davis, I mean, you saw it the last few weeks. When the more snaps he's getting, the efficiency is there against the run, but also against the pass. I mean, he should have sacked Carson Wentz 2 weeks ago, and he's been getting in the backfield on a consistent basis when he's out there on passing situations. So now you remove Rodney Hudson from the lineup for Arizona, and I think those guys could eat. So that's going to be a big advantage for the Birds on Sunday, our Birds, the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think the other key, though, if you're going to get pressure up the middle on Kyler, you know with his mobility, he's going to want to get on the outside. So the Eagles, the key for their linebackers and their edge rushers, stay disciplined. Do not over pursue. I think, honestly, a key might be to have a quarterback spy on Kyler Murray, whether that's TJ Edwards, maybe prefer Kazir White since he's a faster linebacker, or, Hassan Reddick too. His speed on the edge is going to be very important. Just keeping Kyler Murray from getting to the boundary on the outside, I think is going to be the most crucial part of this game for the Eagles defense, because the defensive tackles are going to eat. If they can flush Kyler from the middle and you've got guys collapsing and bracketing him on the outside and making sure he doesn't get anywhere, it's easier said than done. I'm sure defenses say the same thing about Jalen Hurts, and he does it anyway. Lamar Jackson too, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. When you have elite quarterbacks like this, it doesn't matter what your plan is. Most of the time, it's not going to matter that you have them figure it out, so to speak. They're just going to out-execute you because they're better at this than you are. So Kyler Murray's still going to get his on Sunday. He always does as a scrambler, but staying disciplined and limiting those kind of off-script big plays are going to be the most important. Keep him inside and buy even a little more time for Fletcher Cox to hit home, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams. I think that's going to be a huge key. And not having Rodney Hudson in the lineup for Arizona, that's really big. As for the Eagles, some good and bad news on the injury front. So as I mentioned in segment 1, and Gino took the bet that had to do with Rondale Moore and DeVonta Smith, the Eagles are, for the second straight week, they are not going to have their starting slot cornerback in Avonte Maddox. So Josiah Scott's going to start on the inside. The good news, though, is Darius Slay was a full participant in Friday's practice. He is expected to go. So Darius Slay and James Bradbury will still be your boundary corners on the outside. Josiah Scott will start in the slot against Rondale Moore. So that's definitely a matchup to watch. But, Avonte Maddox has been having, I thought he had a career year last year, but this year, the first 3 games of the season, that's the best version of Avonte Maddox I've ever seen, over the 2021 version, over the rookie 2018 version, when he was one of the highest grade PFF corners down the stretch, the final playoff stretch of the season. So not having Maddox is still a big loss for sure, especially against an explosive offense that has a lot of shifty players that they move inside. But at the same time, getting Darius Slay back is going to be really important. It's a high passing volume Cardinals offense. So to have Zach McPherson and, again, Josiah Scott out there, that you could get away with that in the rainy conditions that was that Jaguars game on Sunday, but this game's going to be a lot different inside in the desert. And then when it comes to the offensive side of the football, again, good and bad news on the offensive line. Jordan Mailata is doubtful to play with that shoulder injury. Andre Dillard's still a work in progress coming off his injury, so it's going to be likely Jack Driscoll at left tackle again, like it was on Sunday against the Jaguars. I thought Driscoll held his own the more the game went on. And the Cardinals, they don't have Chandler Jones anymore. They don't have a super scary defensive line like they used to, but, that's definitely a loss when you lose your franchise left tackle. Definitely rely on the run game to help get Driscoll going early on. When it comes to right guard, Isaac Seumalo, Sua Opeta had to play for him in the second half. Isaac Seumalo is expected to play as well. He was a full participant in practice on Friday. So, again, good and bad news for the Eagles on the injury front. Seumalo and Slay are going to play. No intended rhyme there. Avonte, Maddox, and Jordan Mailata not expected to play. Maddox already ruled out, and then Mailata is doubtful. So I wouldn't rush him back. I think they can get by without him in this game against Arizona. It's still going to be a tough matchup, but I think Driscoll can hold his own for another week. And, shout out to Driscoll. I mean, the versatility of that kid. He's now played in a couple years for a fourth round selection. I mean, what value how he got there out of Auburn with Driscoll. And I remember Prince Tega Winogo was the guy that I was more interested in on that Auburn front. But Driscoll's been obviously the better player. I mean, Prince Tega Winogo got cut by the Eagles as a rookie. Jack Driscoll has played now right guard. He's played left tackle. He's played right tackle. I'm sure they've worked him at practice as a center at times with the unknown of last year with Landon Dickerson's health and Isaac Seumalo being out for the year, needing a backup for Jason Kelsey before Cam Jurgens got drafted. He can play pretty much all five spots. I mean, Sunday was the first time he had ever played left tackle at the NFL level. It's Jeff Stoutland just having these guys ready, but also not everybody can do this. I mean, Andre Dillard is a huge example of a guy that can only play one spot. He can play left tackle. We saw how disastrous it was when he tried to play right tackle a couple years ago as a rookie. It was a mess. So Stoutland is a huge reason that these guys are ready to go, but you also got to give credit to Driscoll and a lot of these linemen that are extremely versatile. Mailata's played right tackle and left tackle. You saw back in the day, Halapuli Vaitai was always ready to go at any spot. Isaac Seumalo himself has played center at college. He played left guard his entire career in the NFL. Now he's playing right guard at a really high level. These guys are all just extremely versatile, and that's so crucial to have, and it's why the Eagles' offensive line outside of 2020 just hasn't skipped a beat in like a decade for sure. All right, Eagles fans, we'll be right back after this. It's a Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, Donovan McNabb. He's talking again about the Eagles, and not in a great way, not in a super negative way, but it's bothering me, and we're going to get into it right here on Locked On Eagles. But first, a shout out to another one of our sponsors. It's the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Bet Online. They're your number one source for all your football betting information this season. Head over to betonline.net and ride with me. I promise I'm going to win you some money this week. I know I'm 4-8, but I'm having a good feeling. I'm going to go 3-0. I'm taking A.J. Brown, the over, 73.5 receiving yards, the over on DeVonta Smith, 3.5 receptions, and I'm taking Dallas Goedert to have more receiving yards than Zach Ertz. You can have head-to-head matchups, parlays, game props. You can bet just money line who's going to win the game, futures, NFL MVP, Rookie of the Year. The Philadelphia Phillies are in the playoffs right now. You can bet on the MLB. The NBA season's coming up. The NHL, MMA, boxing, golf, everything at betonline.net. They remain your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. Head over to betonline.net on your computer right now or your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Friday edition of your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making LOE your first listen each and every day. So the Eagles are 4-0, right? They're on top of the world. Jalen Hurts looks like he's taking the MVP step at just 24 years old. He is doing literally everything we laid out in this offseason we needed him to do to feel like he could be the long-term solution at quarterback. They have to me, the best group of weapons in the NFL right now with A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, Quez Watkins, Kenneth Gainwell, Trey Sermons giving you good reps. The list goes on and on. You have the best offensive line in football. Your defense has the most sacks in the NFL. They have the most forced turnovers. Quarterbacks right now, I saw the stat from PFF today. Quarterbacks right now have a better passer rating throwing it into the ground on every rep than they would targeting James Bradbury and Darius Slay. Isn't that, I mean, their secondary is dominating. Their safeties are holding their own. TJ Edwards and Kazir White, it's the best linebacker play of the Eagles we've seen in a decade outside of maybe the Super Bowl season. Even now, they're probably playing better than Nigel Bradham and Michael Kendricks did back then. Everything is working. They're deep. They're top heavy with stars. They're 4-0. They're winning in different ways, passing the football, running the football because of their defense in the rain, in the sunshine, regardless of the fact the Eagles it's been a perfect season. And yet Donovan McNabb, who's supposed to be the Eagles, he's supposed to be a beloved cornerstone of this franchise whose jersey is retired. Nobody will ever wear number 5 again in franchise history. When it comes to, I think Nick Foles is the best quarterback in Eagles history because he won the Super Bowl. But when it comes to quantity, the longest stretch of success over time, Donovan McNabb is the most successful Eagles quarterback in franchise history, right? So you'd want to think positively about this guy, and you would hope the relationship with him and the franchise would be good, but it really isn't. Everything I laid out for you about why you should believe in the Eagles. And randomly this week, Donovan McNabb says that the Eagles are a couple years away, 2 or 3 years away still from being a Super Bowl contender. I mean, look, I understand why Donovan McNabb feels the way he does a lot of the time about the Eagles. From the jump, he got booed the minute that he got drafted. It felt like nothing he ever did was good enough in this city. If he didn't win a Super Bowl, the Eagles fan base just was not going to accept him the way that they've accepted other players, like guys on his own team like Brian Dawkins, right? And I get why he'd feel slighted. He took this team to 5 consistent, 4 straight conference championship appearances, took a couple years, got back to another one in 2008. They made a Super Bowl in 2004. Consistently every single year, this guy had them in the playoffs. Even when he didn't have great weapons, he had Todd Pinkston and James Thrash and Chad Lewis. I mean, it wasn't a great offense. Freddie Mitchell he had to throw to. He had 1 year of Terrell Owens and a couple years of a young D-Jax and Jeremy Maclin and LaShawn McCoy, and that's really it. All his weapons were running backs, right? Brian Westbrook and Carell Buckhalter and Deuce Staley. So I understand why this guy would feel like kind of slighted. No matter what he did, it was like he wasn't as loved as guys that were less successful than him, like a Randall Cunningham in the 90s. The guy had 1 playoff win to his name in Philadelphia, but I guarantee you more than 50, 60, I bet 70% of Eagles fans would say they like Randall Cunningham more than Donovan McNabb, is maybe even higher. So I understand why he feels slighted, but it is so obvious that he has turned into this jealous, insecure, just jealous and insecure person when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. And and Terrell Owens agreed, by the way. He tweeted out that Donovan McNabb is the most jealous person he has ever seen. He got in on the action responding to McNabb saying the Eagles are a few years away still because it just reeks of that jealousy and insecurity. I would understand the point. You don't have to be a homer just because you're an all-time great in Eagles history. You don't have to just say everything about the Eagles is, rainbows and unicorns. Like in 2020, if a guy said that, I'd totally roll my eyes. But this one just reeks of the opposite. It's like, come on, man. I mean, the Eagles, what about this team looks like it's a fluke? What about this team says they're still a few years away? They're not a team with they're not the New York Jets where they have a bunch, like every one of their starters is 23 years old. They have a bunch of veterans that have won the Super Bowl before. They have incredible trench play. They have the quarterback taking the MVP step. They have the weapons. They have the combination of veterans and players in their prime and young prospects all clicking at the same time. Like, tell me what about this Eagles team you have to say, oh, they still need this. This still needs to come around. They still need to have all this gel for a few more years before they win a title. I mean, for me, if anybody else said that, I would still disagree. But with McNabb, it's like, I see why he's saying that. Donovan McNabb has always done this. Even if he's ended up right in the end, when Nick Foles was hot in 2013 and 2014, McNabb said he didn't think Foles was a franchise quarterback. For years after Foles left, in 2018 and 2019, McNabb always had comments about Carson Wentz, even before they drafted Jalen Hurts. When Wentz took them on that NFC East run at the end of 2019, Donovan McNabb was saying that they should draft another quarterback. And he wasn't really of high praise of Wentz, even in like the 2017 MVP season. Why? Because the entire city of Philadelphia supported Carson Wentz at that time. The entire city of Philadelphia was behind Nick Foles for a lot of those years. McNabb never got that. So I understand why he would feel jealous and why he would feel the way he does and almost bitter in a way, but at least try to hide it, man. I mean, it's really hard to find him likable anymore, incredible, when he's just making comments that I find extremely irrational. Again, you don't have to just be a homer and say everything's great about this Eagles team, but what about them is a few years away? And T.O. read it from a mile away. And look, T.O. can't talk. It's the pot calling the kettle black. T.O. was toxic as hell in Philadelphia too, but he was right about McNabb. And I think a lot of fans are starting to, I think early on, they sided with McNabb over T.O., but I think as the years have went on, more Eagles fans probably agree with T.O. now in that beef back in 2004 than they agree with McNabb. T.O., let me check the tweet. So he said something along the lines of McNabb is like one of the most jealous people he's ever met in response to McNabb saying the Eagles were a few years away. So this is the exact tweet from T.O. Quote, tried to tell y'all that years ago, but because everybody thought I was the bad guy and the media didn't help the situation, putting their spin on the untrue negative perception, I've never seen a more jealous person. That was Terrell Owens on Donovan McNabb. It's tough, man. Number 5, it's the weirdest relationship in the NFL between a city and the fan base and their greatest quarterback ever, right? What other fan base has this kind of relationship with their greatest quarterback ever? I don't know if there is one like this. And a lot of that was fans and the media early on with McNabb, and now it's a lot what that turned Donovan into. I mean, he is not on my top 5, maybe even top 10 all-time favorite Eagles. Growing up now, it's hard to find him very likable. And I just think he's so wrong about that take. I think he's so wrong. Again, he doesn't have to agree with everything, but I think that's wrong. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for tuning into LOE each and every day, Monday through Friday, on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Make sure your second listen is the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Louie DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go, Birds.